name's Bladen from Scott, and in this series we'll be covering a wide range of look and feel and navigation within D365 Finance and Operations. In this session, I'll be covering how to log in and out of Dynamics, as well as how to run multiple sessions, legal entities and companies, as well as basic user settings. It should be noted that I'm using a standard D365 Finance and Operations environment, which has Microsoft's Contoso demo data. So let's jump right in. Dynamics Finance and Operations is a cloud-based solution, so you will need access to the internet and a browser to access Dynamics. Now you can access Dynamics through a URL. So the first time you log in, you may need to enter your login and password details. I'm currently logged into a company called USMF, which we can see in the top right-hand corner, and we can see that I have actually 2 browser tabs open for my session. To log out of Dynamics, we can close our entire browser window, or alternatively, in the top right-hand corner where your initials or potentially your image is, you can left-click and sign out. If you do sign out, you will need to sign in with your credentials again. Now, the URL that you use to log into Dynamics is incredibly important. It tells you a number of things. The first thing is which environment you're logged into. And as you can see, I'm logged into a Walker Scott demo environment. The second part of the information that's really important is the company, which is followed by the CMP equals. So in this example, I'm logged into USMF. And lastly, the last part of the URL tells you where you are navigating in the system. So as I navigate through Dynamics to an area within the system, you will see that the URL will also change. And we can see that the URL has changed to show that I'm on a different page. I'm still logged into the same company, but I'm on a different page. Now, speaking of companies, I can navigate back and switch to a different company. So in this example, I am currently logged into USMF, and there's a few different ways that you can switch legal entities. The first option is to click in the right-hand corner and left-click, and we can see that we have a drop-down now for companies. Now, if I know the company code, I can type it directly into this box. So I could type in USRT, for example, which is another legal entity, and then hit the Enter key, and we will then be logged in to USRT. The other alternative is, if you don't know, is you can click in the drop-down and then click and select a particular company. So, for example, I can switch to the DEMF company, and I'm now logged into the German legal entity. Now, one thing to note is you can have multiple sessions open, and most browsers will actually have a duplicate function. So, in this case, I'd like to duplicate my session. I can right-click and duplicate, and you can see I now have an additional session through a browser. Now I can drag this tab over to another monitor, and I can work in multiple legal entities at the same time. So for example, in the background, I have my Contoso Entertainment System Germany company, and on this session, I could log into USMF. Now, we do strongly advise that you're very careful when you're working in multiple legal entities to ensure that you are transacting in the correct legal entity. Now, with this browser, I can also share the hyperlinks to colleagues. So what does that mean? Is if I'm working in a particular legal entity and I'd like someone to access a form or page that I'm working on, I can copy this entire URL, and a colleague could paste this into a new browser session, and it will also take them to that same page in the same legal entity. And that's really important to note, is that the URL contains the company as well. And that's the third method that we can do to switch companies. So I'm going to duplicate my session again. So I have another tab with USMF. And then this tab is a duplicate with USMF. I could now change the URL, change the code within the URL to switch companies. And now you can see I'm in USRT for this tab, and I'm in USMF for this tab. So I'm going to navigate back home and close these browsers tabs. So I've just got one tab now, and I'm in the USMF legal entity. Now we're going to cover user defaults. So user defaults are very important for things like time zones and your language settings, as well as your general user preferences. So how we navigate to user defaults is under the settings icon in the top right hand corner. We left click and then click on user options. Now, first of all, you can pick a theme or color. So at the moment, I've got a pink theme color that's displayed. However, if you are colorblind like I am, you can have different colors that suit you as well. You can go for a high contrast to assist you if you are color impaired. I'm going to leave this as pink. What you will also notice is that you can change the size of the grids. So I can change the size to a smaller grid, which will give additional real estate on the screen. I can change also back to the larger size. And there are also browser-based shortcuts, which you can then increase your zoom if you need a larger working space as well. So I'm just going to leave my browser back at the 100% and use the larger size user preferences. Then under the Preferences tab, we can see that we have a lot of options here. The first to note is that you can default your legal entity for when you log in. So at the moment, my legal entity default is USMF. I could change this to another legal entity provided I have the security access. The initial default page I'm going to leave as the workspaces. However, you can change this to be another default page. Language and time zone settings are really important. So I'm based in Sydney, Australia. So I'm going to have my language set to English Australian and also my date time format. So in Australia, we typically go day, month, year, and this is what will control a lot of those settings. In terms of your time zones, it's also really important that your time zone is accurately reflected so that it shows your transactions dates according to your time zone. Now, the country region is also quite important because this does change some of the fields and language settings. So, for example, GST is what is called sales tax in other legal entities, VAT in other countries. So by having my settings as Australian, some of the labels throughout the system will change to the Australian translations. Document handling is strongly recommended to have as yes, as well as some of these other tokens to turn on. So showing tools on focus is a really helpful one there as well. Moving on to account then, this shows some of the account details. So you can see that my user ID and also my email address as well as I'm logging in. I do also have a signature enabled, which can be used for some functionality within D365. Under workflow then, we have send notifications in email set to yes. So this will ensure that any workflow notifications will be sent to me via email. I also have send notifications to the Action Center, which is up the top here, as yes, and I have my items grouped together. Now, delegation is also really handy. So if you're planning on going on leave for an extended period of time or you're sick, you can delegate your work items for various modules or for specific workflows, and you can pick someone that is going to approve your items on your behalf. So you will need to choose an individual to pick. You can then also choose your start time. So if I was to go on leave from next week, I can also choose an end date as well. So if I'm away for the week, I can say that this particular individual in the dropdown, I'm going to pick Alicia, is going to be my delegate to approve any workflow items during this time. And we can enable that. Now, when I do return from holidays, you can actually remove these as well. You can remove them from the list. And if you forget to do this, a system administrator can change your user options and your preferences on your behalf. So in this session, we've covered quite a lot. We've covered how to log in and out. We've covered how companies are used and how you can switch between legal entities. We've also shown how you can have multiple sessions open at once. And we've also covered user defaults. Thank you.